He shouldn't have answered the door. The first knock came at 12:41 a.m. 3 hard, deliberate pounds against the old wooden door. Not frantic, not polite, measured, like whoever was out there wanted him to know they had all the time in the world. Jonah froze in place, the fire poker still in his hand. The power had gone out hours ago, and the battery on his phone had long since died. The only light came from the few remaining embers in the fireplace, casting a sickly orange glow on the living room walls of the cabin. Wind howled outside, rattling the windows. He could barely see 5 feet in front of him. But that knock cut through everything. Then came the second knock, then the third, each louder than the last, shaking the door on its hinges. Jonah stepped back. The floor creaked beneath his feet. His breath hitched. He wasn't expecting anyone. He was alone, 20 miles from the nearest town, deep in the woods, staying in the rundown cabin his uncle had left him in his will. He thought it would be peaceful out here, a chance to reset, but the peace had ended the moment the sun dipped behind the trees. That knock shattered it. Then came the voice. Jonah, ... It's me. Open the door. The words slid through the cracks in the wood like smoke. A voice he hadn't heard in months. A voice that made his stomach turn. Soft, sweet, familiar. It was Erin's voice, his ex-girlfriend, his dead ex-girlfriend. Jonah stumbled backward, bumping into the coffee table. A picture frame fell, the glass cracking loudly against the floor. Jonah, the voice called again, just outside the door. I'm freezing out here. He squeezed his eyes shut. This was stress, grief, isolation playing tricks on him. Erin had died last fall. They'd found her car half submerged in Echo Lake. Her body had washed up days later. The funeral was closed casket. Jonah had only seen the photos, and even those were too much. She was gone. There was no way she could be out there, and yet, he knew that voice. He remembered every syllable, every soft J in his name, every hesitation in her tone when she was scared, and right now, she sounded terrified. I don't want to be alone anymore, the voice whispered. Jonah edged toward the window beside the door and slowly pulled the curtain back. There was no one on the porch, just snow falling heavy and silent. The trees were silhouettes in the dark, unmoving. He exhaled shakily. Maybe he was hearing things. Cabin fever was a real thing. Maybe it wasn't. Knock, knock, knock. This time it came from the back door. Jonah jumped. The back door led into the kitchen, down the narrow hallway where the overhead bulb had blown out 2 nights ago. He hadn't gotten around to replacing it. Now the whole hallway was black. He tightened his grip on the poker and crept toward the sound. The knocking started again. 3 deliberate knocks, then silence, then a whisper. Closer now. You left me down there, Jonah, in the dark. Jonah's heart thudded like a drum. Down where she drowned. There was no down there. This was his mind unraveling. He knew it, but knowing didn't help. He reached the kitchen doorway and peered inside. No movement, no light, just the wind outside and the low creak of the cabin shifting. He stepped inside. As he passed the fridge, he noticed something odd. The condensation on the door had frozen over. The temperature inside the house was dropping fast. He looked at the back door, still closed, but the doorknob was turning, slowly, deliberately. He held his breath. The knob stopped. Then came a sound from behind him, from the hallway closet. A soft tap 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 against the inside of the door. He turned, more tapping, then scratching, then breathing. Jonah, ... double quotes, came the voice. Why did you lock me in? He stumbled backward, the poker raised. You're not real. You're not real. Erin's gone. The closet door handle twisted violently. Then it stopped. Silence. Jonah felt every hair on his body stand on end. He crept forward, reached out with the poker, and nudged the door. It swung open, nothing inside, just coats, boots, and a pile of dirt. On the floor, soil, dark and damp, fresh. He crouched and touched it with his fingertip. Cold, real. How the hell did fresh soil get inside the closet? He stood up fast, turned to head back to the living room. That's when he saw it. Writing on the mirror above the fireplace. Words scrawled in soot and ash, smeared with something red. Let me in this time. He stared at the message, unable to move. Then bang, bang, bang. The front door slammed against its frame, over and over, as if someone or something was throwing its whole weight against it. Jonah backed away. The fireplace flared to life, just for a moment, and in that flash of light, he saw a figure standing behind the frosted glass of the front door. A woman, dripping wet. Face pale, lips blue, eyes wide and glassy. Erin, but not Erin as she was in life. Erin as she looked. When they pulled her from the lake, Jonah screamed and dropped the poker. He ran to the kitchen, slammed the back door lock. He didn't care if he looked insane. He didn't care if this was a breakdown. Then the lights flickered once, all through the house, and the front door slowly creaked open. No footsteps, no wind, just an agonizing squeal of old wood. Jonah pressed himself into the kitchen corner, heart thundering. He saw her. Erin stepped inside. Her hair was plastered to her face. Her dress was torn, stuck to her skin with patches of ice. Her arms hung lifelessly by her sides. Her mouth was sewn shut with thick black thread. Her eyes locked on his. She opened her mouth, and the thread snapped. A horrible wet tearing sound filled the air. Jonah sank to the floor, shaking. And then another voice came. From the hallway behind him, another Erin. This one was dry, alive looking, dressed in the hoodie she used to wear to bed. Jonah, she said softly, voice trembling. That's not me, don't believe her. He looked between the two of them, one soaked, rotting, mouth torn open, one calm, sad, real. Two Erin's, one dead, maybe both. He didn't move. The wet one stepped closer. The floor creaked with waterlogged footsteps. Her smile grew wider than it should have. Her mouth stretched. Too far. Behind him, the dry Erin whispered. She came from the lake. She's not me. She's what you left behind. Jonah's hands shook as he reached for the fireplace poker again. He didn't know who to believe. And worst of all, he was starting to forget what Erin's real voice even sounded like. The tape in the fireplace. Jonah didn't sleep. Not because he didn't want to, but because they wouldn't let him. After the thing, the wet Erin disappeared into the darkness of the living room. The cabin had gone deathly still. No wind, no creaks, no whispers. Like the entire world had paused, holding its breath to see what he would do next. The dry Erin, the one from the hallway, had vanished too. Not violently, not dramatically. She was just gone, like she had never been there to begin with. Jonah sat curled up on the floor of the kitchen, holding the fireplace poker like a lifeline, his back against the pantry door. The front door was wide open, letting in snow and silence. But he wasn't going near it again. He didn't dare. His mind felt fractured, memory bleeding into memory, sound distorting like underwater echoes. Everything he thought he knew about life, death, and sanity was unraveling at the seams. And yet, one thing remained sharp in his mind. That voice, the one that whispered to him, that called itself Erin. Only now, he wasn't sure which one had been telling the truth. Was it the decaying one who stared at him with dead eyes, or the warm one who warned him just before vanishing? He rubbed his face with shaking hands and stood up, legs aching. He needed to do something, anything. Find a weapon, find his phone, find answers. He stepped carefully back into the living room, avoiding the puddle of water still lingering on the wooden floor, the one left behind by her footsteps. The mirror over the fireplace was empty now. No message, just his own haggard reflection staring back at him. Then something caught his eye, a shape buried in the ashes inside the fireplace. Jonah crouched, reached in, and brushed away the blackened soot with trembling fingers. A VHS tape, burnt along the edges, melted slightly, but the label was still intact. It read, in uneven black marker, "Play me." Jonah blinked. You've got to be kidding me. He hadn't owned a VHS player since he was a kid. But wait, his uncle had one. He remembered seeing it in the storage room in the back hallway on his first day here. Dusty, probably dead, but maybe, just maybe, it still worked. He grabbed the tape, brushed the ash off his hands, and made his way toward the back. Each step echoed unnaturally, like the house itself was listening. The storage room smelled like dust and old pine, boxes of canned food, moth-eaten coats, a filing cabinet with broken locks, and on the shelf near the floor, just where he remembered, was the VCR, an ancient black brick of a machine, with a tangled cord and a small portable TV with a built-in screen. Jonah plugged it all in and prayed it still had life. To his surprise, the red standby light blinked on. He slipped in the tape, it clicked. Word began to play. The TV screen flickered, static, then snow, then a video, shaky, black and white, like it was filmed on an old camcorder. The timestamp in the bottom corner read TODAY 12:02 a.m. Jonah's mouth went dry. The camera showed the inside of the cabin, his cabin, from the perspective of someone standing in the hallway. The living room came into view. The sofa, the mirror above the fireplace itself, cold, unlit. Then movement. A figure stepped into frame. A woman, wet hair clinging to her face, bare feet dripping water onto the floor. Erin, Jonah's stomach twisted. She turned and looked directly into the camera. But it didn't feel like she was looking at whoever was holding it. It felt like she was looking at him. Through the screen, suddenly, the image on the VHS froze. Then glitched. The static bled inward, washing over her face. The picture returned, but now Erin was closer, standing right in front of the fireplace. Jonah leaned in. In the video, she raised her hand and pointed upward, toward the mirror, the one now hanging just a few feet away from where Jonah sat watching the screen. In the footage, she touched the mirror's surface, traced a shape, letters, words, "She's lying." Then, the tape went black. Jonah sat frozen, unable to breathe. That phrase again, "She's lying." Which one? He stood, eyes fixed on the real mirror now, heart hammering. There was nothing on it. He moved toward it slowly, half expecting the glass to explode in his face, but it stayed still. Then, in the bottom left corner, a single wet fingerprint appeared, just one fresh. He turned around. Poker ready. No one there, just the faint creak of the floor beneath his own weight, until from the kitchen came the sound of the back door slamming shut, hard, once, twice, a third time. He didn't move, didn't even blink. Then, silence. And then music. Faint, muffled like an old lullaby being played from another room. He turned back to the VHS player. The screen was no longer black. The tape was playing again, but it was no longer footage of the house. Now it showed a child's bedroom, pink wallpaper, stuffed animals lined up on a tiny bed, a music box slowly spinning in the corner, playing a haunting tune. Jonah had never seen this room before, but it felt familiar. On the bed sat a little girl, 5 or 6 years old, brown hair in braids, legs dangling over the side, and in her lap, a severed doll's head, staring up with black stitched eyes. The girl looked up at the camera and smiled. Jonah felt something cold settle in his spine. "Jonah," the little girl whispered from the TV. He stumbled back. "Do you remember me?" "No," he whispered. I don't. You left me there. You left us both." The screen flickered again. Now it showed Jonah as a child, standing at the edge of a dock, crying. And behind him, something rising from the lake. Jonah's knees buckled. He dropped to the floor. "No, that's not real. I don't remember. You forgot what happened, Jonah," the girl's voice echoed. "But we didn't." The screen went black again, but the room didn't fall silent, because someone was singing in the hallway. That same lullaby, soft, off-key, childlike. Jonah pushed himself up, legs trembling. He reached the hallway and turned toward the sound. There, at the end of the hall, stood the little girl from the tape. But now, her eyes were hollow, empty sockets leaking dark water. The doll's head was still in her hands, its eyes now blinking. She began to step forward. Jonah backed away, but the walls felt smaller now, closer, tighter. The girl opened her mouth and spoke, in Erin's voice. "You left me in the water, Jonah, just like her." He screamed on. All the lights in the cabin exploded at once. When Jonah came to, he was on the floor of the living room. The mirror above the fireplace had shattered. His hands were covered in soot and blood. The poker was gone. He sat up, head pounding. The VHS tape was gone to dot, but on the wall, in jagged slashes across the wood, were new words carved deep. "She's in the reflection." Jonah stared at them for a long time. Then, across the room, the TV flickered on again. No tape inside, just static, and in the static, a face slowly began to form. Erin, single quotes, is smiling. Double quotes, the room behind the fire. The TV screen fizzled out. Again, Jonah stared at it, breath shallow, heart still slamming against his ribs like it was trying to escape his chest. Erin's face had been in the static, smiling, almost waiting. He stood up, hands still shaking, and walked slowly toward the fireplace. Something about those carved words had stuck in his mind. "She's in the reflection." That mirror, now shattered, still held sharp shards of itself embedded. In the wooden frame above the fireplace, he studied it carefully. One sliver reflected his left eye. Another showed the corner of the room, except he froze. The reflection was wrong. It was subtle, but unmistakable. In the shard on the left, the room appeared normal. The empty couch, the coffee table. But the far right shard, it showed a shadow, a door, but there was no door in that part of the room. Jonah turned around. Nothing but a smooth wall of logs and pine. No seams, no cracks. He stared at the mirror. Fragment again. The door was still there. He reached for the fireplace poker, then remembered it had vanished. So instead, he grabbed the metal base of the fireplace shovel, wedged it between the stones on the hearth, and began prying. Stone and wood creaked as he worked. Sweat rolled down his forehead, not from heat. The fire hadn't been lit since the night Erin died, but from pure, quivering adrenaline. Then, with a deep groan, part of the stone gave way. A section of the fireplace shifted slightly backward, and then swung inward, like a door hidden behind stone and soot. Jonah stepped back, blinking at the dust cloud that erupted into the room. Behind the fireplace was a tunnel, narrow, dark, lined with old boards and rotted beams. He reached for the emergency flashlight hanging on the wall near the back door, and clicked it. On. The tunnel sloped downward. It smelled like wet earth, mold, and something else, something rotting. Jonah swallowed hard and stepped in. The crawlspace beneath the cabin stretched further than it should. Single quotes, VE. Far further. The cabin was barely 800 square feet above ground, but this hallway went on at least twice that. His flashlight flickered against walls covered in old drawings, charcoal sketches, some childish, some intricate, all horrifying. Figures with hollow eyes, a lake full of hands, a little girl dangling from a tree branch with her head backward, as if twisted by something unseen. Jonah recognized one of the sketches. It was of him, drawn as a child, standing barefoot at the edge of a dock, his eyes covered in black smudges. Just like the tape, he kept walking. Finally, at the end of the corridor, he reached a wooden door. A single word had been burned into the center panel. Remember. He hesitated, and then pushed it open. The room was small, a low-ceilinged space, barely large enough for a bed and dresser. But what stood out most was the wall of televisions, 6 of them, stacked 3 by 2, all vintage, all dark. Beside them, on a tiny wooden table, sat a second VHS tape. This one was labeled in messy handwriting, 1988. Jonah, his knees nearly gave out. He was 5 years old that year, hands trembling. He looked around the room and saw a VHS player hooked to the TV stack. He slid the tape in. The screens lit up. At once, footage began to play. Not from a handheld camera this time. It looked like security camera footage. The view was of a kitchen, unfamiliar at first. The counters were dirty. The window cracked open to the night. A woman moved into frame, young, barefoot, wearing a hospital gown. Her hair was soaked. She moved with a jerkiness, like each joint was 1 second behind her body. She turned slowly toward the camera. Jonah gasped. It was his mother, or it looked like her. But wrong. Her eyes were too wide, her pupils huge. Her mouth seemed like it was struggling to remember how to smile. She bent forward and vomited. Lake water onto the floor. The camera crackled. Now she was holding something. A child, a toddler with curly hair crying. Jonah stared in horror. She set him down and whispered something unintelligible, then turned, crawled toward the kitchen sink, and disappeared into the drain. Just gone, like water down a pipe. The screen changed again. Now, Jonah was sitting in a playpen, laughing, clapping his hands. Then a shadow passed behind him. From the corner of the room emerged the little girl, the one from the previous tape, the one with the hollow eyes. She knelt beside the playpen and leaned close. Jonah, come with me, she whispered. We can go back in the water. The screen blinked. The girl vanished. Now it showed Jonah, older, maybe 7, standing in the woods near the lake. Another child stood beside him, a girl wearing a blue raincoat. Erin, they were arguing. Her voice echoed faintly. You promised you'd never tell. Jonah shouted back. I didn't. I just wanted to go home. Suddenly, a splash. Erin turned and ran toward the water. Jonah chased her and then stopped at the edge of the dock. On screen, Erin jumped in and didn't come back up. Not for 1 second. Not even to scream. Just silence. Jonah, in the video, collapsed on the dock and cried. Back in the hidden room, grown Jonah stared at the screen. Numb. I didn't remember. He whispered, I forgot all of it. The screen flickered. Final footage now. A hospital room. Machines beeping. A woman lying in bed. Jonah's mother, still alive but frail, her hair thin, her eyes distant. She looked at someone off camera and whispered, "She keeps coming back. She comes from the mirror. Jonah needs to forget. He has to forget." Then she sat upright, eyes rolling back, and began to scream. The screen turned black. Jonah sat motionless for nearly 5 full minutes. The cold earth of the hidden room pressed against his spine. He had drowned. Erin. Not directly, but she had jumped in and he had let her. They were just kids. But that didn't matter. She had died, and he had buried it so deep inside his mind. He'd lived the last 25 years without even remembering. Until now. He looked around the room again, and something caught his eye. A framed photo, covered in dust. He wiped it clean. It was of the cabin, taken decades ago. In front stood 3 people. A woman, his mother, looking young and happy. A man, unfamiliar, but smiling. And a girl in a blue raincoat. Erin. The caption below read, "Summer, 88. Home again." Jonah dropped the frame. It cracked on the floor. They had all lived here, together. This wasn't some random family vacation home. This was the house he grew up in. The realization sent a jolt through his spine. His mother hadn't bought the cabin recently. She had returned to it, because the past never really left. Back upstairs, the cabin was completely silent. He emerged from the crawl space, brushing ash and dirt from his clothes. The TV in the living room was off again, but on the floor was a puddle. A wet footprint led from the fireplace to the hallway. Jonah followed it, numb. Halfway down the hall, the bathroom door creaked open. Inside, the mirror was fogged over, even though the room was cold, and written in the condensation were new words, "Come back to the lake." Jonah turned to run, but the mirror exploded outward, and Erin stepped through, dripping, hollow-eyed, smiling. She reached for him with hands that no longer looked human and whispered, "You promised you'd never leave me behind." The frozen lake. Jonah ran. The mirror shattered behind him, glass raining down like ice. Erin's silhouette had already stepped through, dripping wet onto the hardwood. Her voice clung to the air like fog. "You promised." He sprinted barefoot out the front door, barely noticing the bitter night wind slapping his face. The snowstorm had died down, but the world outside was silent, too silent. No animal sounds, no trees creaking, only the whisper of something. Following behind, the flashlight flickered in his hand. His breath came in clouds. His chest ached with each inhale, but he didn't stop. He knew exactly where he had to go. The lake, even now, in winter, he could feel it out there, still watching, waiting. He reached the tree line in minutes, boots crunching through snow as he pushed deeper into the woods. The flashlight flickered, again, then died. Total darkness swallowed him. Then, faintly, laughter, a girl's giggle. Just ahead. He didn't call her name. Couldn't. His mouth had gone dry. The air around him felt warped somehow, like the world was folding inward, like he was walking back into something ancient, something that never wanted him to leave in the first place. The path opened suddenly, and there it was, Black Hollow Lake. It was frozen over, a wide, flat sheet of ice, glinting faintly under the moonlight. Snow clung to the far dock. Trees ringed the clearing like silent witnesses. But what hit Jonah hardest was how familiar it felt. Deja vu rippled through him. He had been here, right here, not just as a child, many times. Memories began to stir like ghosts in thawing ground. He stepped onto the ice. It groaned beneath his weight, but held. He moved slowly toward the center, cold slicing through him with every step. Halfway across, he stopped, because there, in the center of the lake, stood Erin, wearing the same blue raincoat, hair dripping, feet bare on the ice. But her eyes, they weren't hers anymore, no life behind them, just the deep, endless black of frozen water. "You left me," she whispered. Her voice echoed unnaturally, like it bounced not from the trees, but from inside his own skull. "I didn't mean to," Jonah said, his voice cracking. "We were kids. I was scared." Erin tilted her head. Her neck cracked slightly as she moved. "You forgot," she hissed. "You let yourself forget." She took a step forward. The ice groaned again, and suddenly, Jonah saw them. Shapes beneath the surface. Hands, faces, children, dozens of them, all pressed against the underside of the ice, watching, mouths open, screaming silently. One of them looked just like him, but younger. Another looked like his mother. Erin kept walking. You didn't just leave me, she said. You left them. Jonah fell to his knees. I don't remember them. I didn't know. Erin's eyes turned completely black now, and she smiled. A wide, inhuman smile that stretched impossibly across her pale face. You do remember, she whispered, and she touched his forehead with one wet blue finger. The world snapped. Not the ice, the world. Jonah fell backward through sound and time, into a vision. He was in the cabin again, but everything was alive this time. He was a child, maybe 5, running barefoot down the hall. Erin just ahead, giggling. His mother calling them from the kitchen. Then the TV turned on by itself. A voice whispered from the static, "Open the door behind the fire." Jonah turned, confused. Erin had stopped laughing. She was staring at the TV now. Mesmerized, she stepped closer, her eyes glassy, her voice flat. "She's calling us." The screen rippled, and from the static, something stepped out. Not Erin, not his mother. Something tall, faceless, soaked in lake water. It reached for them. Little Jonah screamed, and then the vision shifted. Now he was in the basement, the room, with the televisions, but he wasn't alone. Other children were there, sitting, watching their own tapes. Some of them wept. One turned to him, a boy with no eyes, and said, "We made a deal. She promised we'd never feel alone again." The floor cracked beneath them. Water spilled upward, like reverse gravity, and the world collapsed again. Jonah jolted awake, back on the frozen lake. Erin stood over him now, arms outstretched. The children under the ice clawed upward, faces contorted. In silent agony, Jonah understood. This wasn't about her. Erin had drowned, yes, but something else had taken her. Afterward, something older, and now it wore her face. The entity had fed on Jonah's guilt. His buried memories, twisted them, made him a portal to return. She didn't want revenge. She wanted another body. "No," Jonah whispered. "You don't get to wear her face anymore." He pulled something from his coat pocket. The VHS tape, the one labeled 1988. Jonah. He lifted it over his head and slammed it onto the ice. It shattered immediately. The world shuddered. The lake cracked. Not just beneath him, all around, like a spiderweb fracture spreading from the tape's impact. Erin's smile faded. "Forget again," she said. "They always forget." "I won't," Jonah said, and the ice gave way. He plunged into the freezing black water. He didn't fight it. He let it pull him under. Let the memories flood his mind. All of them. Erin's voice, his mother's screams, the other children, the shadows on the TV. Then, beneath the surface, he saw her. Erin, the real one, not smiling, just floating, eyes closed, waiting. She opened them slowly. "You remember now," she said. "It's time to finish it." Jonah nodded, even as his lungs screamed. Erin reached forward and touched his chest. Light burst outward. A warmth spread through his freezing body, and then nothing. Jonah gasped awake. He was lying on the dock. Morning sun burned through the fog. He sat up, coughing. The lake was still frozen, except now. A wide crack split the center. And Erin was gone. No sign of her. No blue raincoat. No footprints. He stood up on shaky legs. The cabin loomed behind him, quiet once again, but different. He walked back slowly, the snow crunching under his feet. Inside, the living room was intact. No shattered mirror, no puddles. The TV sat unplugged. Everything was clean, as if the nightmare had never happened. On the coffee table sat a single item, the photograph, the one with his mother, the man, Erin. Only now, his own face had appeared. In the photo, standing between them, smiling, a family, frozen in time, and beneath it, a message written in ink. "Thank you for remembering. The forgotten ones." Jonah stared at the photo on the coffee table, his fingers trembling as he picked it up. The ink on the back was still wet. "Thank you for remembering." His own face in the picture, it wasn't just inserted. It was real, like it had always been there. Like history itself had changed. He stumbled back. "None of this makes sense," he whispered, but deep down it did. That's what terrified him most. Every piece was snapping into place. The dreams, the flickering TV, the whispers, the eyes beneath the ice. He hadn't imagined them. He had just blocked them out. The cabin was dead silent. Sunlight filtered through the dusty windows. Nothing stirred. No static, no dripping, no voices. It was over, or at least it was supposed to be. Then the smell hit him. Wet earth, rot, smoke. From the hallway. He turned slowly. The basement door was open, just a crack. A familiar cold seeped from the gap. Jonah, a voice barely audible, echoed from below. He froze. That wasn't Erin's voice. It was his mother's. He descended the stairs slowly, each wooden step creaking under his weight. The light bulb above flickered, casting long shadows. The basement looked the same, the wall of TVs, the floorboards blackened with moisture, the strange smell of mildew and time. But now, only one screen was on. Snowy static. And then it cleared. A home video began to play. Jonah leaned closer. It showed a birthday party. He's 5 years old. His mother held a cake with 5 flickering candles. Erin clapped beside him. Then, the power went out in the video. Screams in the dark, a crash, and the tape cut to black. Jonah stood frozen. Then, the screen lit up again, showing the lake at night, a tiny figure, Jonah himself, dragging something heavy toward the water. Bag, a large, soaked bag. Something inside moved. Little Jonah sobbed silently on the screen. She said, "I had to." She said, "Or she'd take you, Erin." "I'm sorry, Mummy." The real Jonah backed away from the screen, shaking his head violently. No, that's not real. I never did that." The screen cut out, and the door behind him slammed shut. Darkness swallowed the room. Only the faint blue light from behind the wall of TVs remained. But something had changed. The concrete floor began to breathe. It pulsed under his feet, like something alive. And then, the voices returned. "You made the deal. You promised us warmth. You turned your back." The wall of TVs burst into life, dozens of eyes staring from every screen. Each child, frozen, pale, whispering through broken mouths. "You forgot us, Jonah. You locked us down here. She said you would." Jonah collapsed to his knees. His heart thundered in his chest. He remembered now, when he and Erin were children, they'd played a game by the lake. An imaginary friend had come from the water, a woman with a soft voice. She promised them anything they wanted, candy, adventures, even to see their dead father again. All she wanted was for them to bring others, other children, other memories. Erin refused, but Jonah had been scared of losing his sister, and so he agreed. He brought kids down into the basement, said it was a secret club. They watched tapes together. The woman in the screen took care of the rest, until, one day, Erin found out. She tried to stop it. She tried to save them, and the woman took her. Instead, Jonah screamed, "No, I was a kid. I didn't know. I didn't understand what I was doing." The TVs flickered again, and now his own face stared back from every screen, wide-eyed, 5 years old, grinning. "We do what we're told. That's what love means." The walls of the basement cracked. Black water seeped in, and in the far corner, a figure began to rise. Not Erin, not his mother, but her, the woman of the lake. She stepped forward slowly, face covered by long, dripping black hair. Her limbs were jointed wrong like a marionette, under someone else's control. Her voice slithered out of the shadows. "You brought them to me. You opened the door, and then you closed it. You locked them in, buried them in forgetfulness." Jonah staggered back, reaching for the stairs, but they were gone. Only water now. The room was slowly flooding. "You can't leave again," she whispered. "You belong with your memories. You belong with me." Her hands reached out, but instead of grabbing him, she offered something, a tape, unlabeled, dripping. Jonah took it. It burned in his hands. "Play it," she said. Jonah looked at the nearest TV and inserted the tape. The screen came alive. It showed a door, red, splintered, covered in frost behind it. Sobbing, children's voices. Erin's voice. Jonah realized something then. He hadn't just forgotten. He had sealed them away, to save himself, to live a normal life, to pretend none of it ever happened. And now, the door was open again. "Set them free," she said. Jonah looked at her. "Will that fix it?" Her black eyes didn't blink. "It will finish it." Jonah stood. "I want them to rest." "Then you must remember all of it," she said. And she stepped aside. Behind her, the wall of the basement cracked fully open, revealing the door from the tape. Red, frosted, crying sounds, still leaking through. He walked toward it, put his hand on the knob. Cold shot through his arm, but he didn't pull back. Inside the door was a room of beds. Children lay on each one, unmoving. Their eyes fluttered as he stepped inside, and at the far end, Erin, still in her blue raincoat, but now peaceful, smiling. You came back, she said. We waited. Jonah stepped closer. Tears poured down his face. I'm sorry. I know, Erin whispered. She took his hand, one by one. The other children began to sit up. Blinking, alive, real. Erin turned to Jonah and smiled. We can go now. A soft light began to bloom in the ceiling. Warmth. Erin squeezed his hand tighter. The children around him began to fade, not vanish, just move on. Upward. And Erin followed, but not before turning to him one last time. Thank you, Jonah. Remember. Jonah fell to his knees as they vanished. The room around him dissolved. The basement vanished. The cabin folded into white light. He woke in a hospital bed. Bright lights overhead. Machines beeping. A nurse leaned over. Hey, you're awake. You've been out for 2 days. Jonah blinked. What? You were found unconscious by a hiker near Black Hollow Lake. Half frozen, Jonah tried to sit up. What about the cabin? What cabin? She frowned. There's no cabin near Black Hollow. Jonah's heart stopped. But the lake frozen solid. No signs of anyone else out there. She handed him a plastic bag of his belongings, his coat, his boots, and a single photograph. One of him, Erin, and his mother, now yellowed and old, but real. He turned it over. On the back, no ink this time, just one faint line scratched into the paper. One more part remains. The one who remembers the ride home from the hospital was quiet. Jonah sat in the back of the cab, hands resting on the old photo in his lap. His breath fogged the window as the snow-dusted hills blurred past. No one had believed his story. The lake, the cabin, the voices, they all chalked it up to hypothermia, exhaustion, a mental break. But he knew the truth. He'd seen the children he'd spoken to. Erin, he remembered everything now, and that's what scared him most, because something was still missing. When Jonah reached home, the apartment felt unfamiliar, like a room he hadn't stepped into in years. Dust coated the shelves. The calendar was still stuck in the week he left. He dropped the bag on the floor and sat in silence, staring at the photo. Then, he saw it. In the corner of the photo, barely visible, behind the trees was a figure, a woman, long black hair, standing in the background, watching. His blood ran cold. He turned the photo over. The words scratched into the back had changed again. One has not moved on. That night, he couldn't sleep. The air felt wrong. The walls creaked with a pressure that didn't come from outside wind. At exactly 3:03 a.m., the TV in the living room clicked on. Jonah jolted upright. He hadn't even plugged it in. The screen flickered to life, static, then darkness, then a bedroom, his bedroom, live footage. He stared in horror as the camera panned. Slowly, to the corner, a figure stood there, hair covering her face. Erin, but not the peaceful version. This Erin was gaunt, pale. Her mouth moved in silent screams. You left me again. Jonah staggered toward the TV. The footage glitched, then zoomed in violently. Erin's eyes were hollow, bleeding. Something behind her, a shadow, pulsed like a living wound in the air. She didn't let me go, Erin whispered. She tricked you. Jonah shouted. What do you mean? I freed you. Erin's voice was barely audible. One child stayed behind. She used it to anchor herself. She's still here. The footage cut out. Black screen. Just before it did, Jonah saw a detail that made his stomach drop. In the background of the video, on the wall behind Erin, was a mirror, and in it he was standing, in real time. Watching. The reflection hadn't matched his movements. It wasn't just a camera feed, it was a warning. Jonah raced to his bedroom and stared at his mirror. For a moment, it was just his own terrified face. Then the surface began to ripple like water, and from the other side, fingers pressed through, dripping, long, inhuman. You were supposed to join us. Her voice, soft, sing-song, came from behind the glass. Jonah backed away. No, I did what you asked. I let them go. Not all of them, she hissed. One still sleeps, and while he dreams, I remain. The mirror cracked. Hair slithered out, wet, black. She was pulling herself through. Jonah ran out of the apartment, into the icy night, breath forming clouds of panic. He didn't know where he was going, only that he had to get away from mirrors, from glass, from her. But in every dark surface, he saw her. Car windows, storefronts, frozen puddles, watching, smiling, beckoning. The whisper followed him through the wind. You know where he is. You buried him. Time to dig him up. Jonah stopped in his tracks. His heart thud. The old garden behind the childhood cabin. The one spot they'd never found. Even the rescuers hadn't searched there. He'd been so little, so terrified, he didn't remember until now. But she had, and she'd waited until he remembered to. By morning, Jonah stood at the edge of the woods. The cabin was gone, nothing but a scorched patch of ground. But the trees remained, and behind them, the old garden was still there, half covered in snow. Wild vines knotted like nerves. He found the spot without thinking. His hands moved on their own, digging, tearing through frozen dirt. Until he struck wood. A box, small, handmade, rotted through. He opened it. Inside, a small stuffed rabbit, Erin's favorite toy, clutched in the skeletal hands of a child-sized body. The breath left Jonah's lungs. It wasn't Erin, it was Dylan, the neighbor's kid, the first one Jonah ever invited into the basement club. He'd gone missing a week later. Everyone thought he'd drowned in the lake, but Jonah had helped hide him to protect Erin, to protect himself. A deal made with something far older than guilt. Jonah dropped to his knees. The earth groaned beneath him, and from the trees she stepped forward, the woman of the lake, her hair dragged behind her like seaweed. Her eyes glistened like ice cracks. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. Jonah stood. I remember him now. She tilted her head. He didn't deserve this. He said, I did. She opened her arms. Then come to me. Jonah nodded. He stepped toward her, and then suddenly threw the rabbit into the fire pit nearby, the bones with it. Flames whooshed to life, licking the sky. She screamed, not in pain, in rage. No, he was mine. Jonah stood firm. He was never yours, and neither is Erin. The earth shook. Wind howled, her face contorted, mouth stretching, unhinging like a snake. But it was too late. The fire burned hotter, brighter, cleansing. The snow around them melted in a wide circle, and she began to fade. Her last words clawed into Jonah's ears. If you forget again, I'll return. Then silence. The forest settled. The light returned. The air warmed. Jonah spent the next few hours burying Dylan properly. He placed the stuffed rabbit beside the fresh grave. This time, he whispered a name. Rest easy, Dylan. I remember you. And as he walked away, he felt something shift inside him. Not darkness, not fear. Peace. 6 months later, Jonah started a foundation in Erin's name, the Remembered Ones, dedicated to children who vanish without closure. Unsolved disappearances, cold cases. He told their stories, shared their photos, made sure none were forgotten again. Every time he felt her presence, flickering TV static, a cold draft near the mirror, he'd light a candle and speak their names aloud. Memory was his protection now, and in the silence, he sometimes heard Erin's voice. I'm proud of you. One evening, he placed a new photo on the wall of the foundation's office. A group of smiling kids. Old, faded. In the back. The same cabin, now burned to the ground. He smiled sadly and turned away. Just before he left, he heard a soft click behind him. The photo had fallen off the wall, face down. Jonah picked it up and flipped it. One last message, scratched into the back. Now we remember you too. The end.